Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Leca Queen podcast. We have today a special guest, and I know he needs no introduction. He is just fabulous. I love him. I love his videos, and he is such a generous and gentle soul. Everyone, kill this plant, Lee. Thank you, Lee, for doing this podcast with me, and welcome.
Thank you so much for having me, Nora. Lee here, helping you become a better plant parent. Kill this plant. Can't wait to have this good chat with you.
I got to know about you from YouTube a while ago, actually, Lee. And the first video of yours that I watched is the video that talked about Leca. And you said that you weren't ready to start Leca, and you're saying to the viewer that they're not ready either, and really grabbed my attention. So, and I was like, what do you mean I'm not ready? I think I'm ready. Why do you say I'm not ready? And what's wrong with Leca? The first thing I want to ask you is, are you still growing your plants in Leca?
Uh, well, to start, I think the most interesting part of that video is that deep down in my heart, I know that Leca is better than growing in soil. Every single
Stop,
plant that
stop.
I've had in Leca,
Say again, say again.
I said, I know that deep down in my heart, you are right. You are correct. Growing your plants in leca is better for them. They've always grown better in leca than in soil.
Mhm.
But my main issue is that the amount of work that it can take going from plants in soil to plants in leca
Mhm.
is a lot more challenging than I think people give credit
Mhm.
for. So if you're not willing to make that full on
Mhm.
commitment to having your plants in leca, then you should really take a second thought about what kind of plant parent you are. Because if you're not willing to do the work, then your plants are really going to
Mhm.
struggle
Mhm.
much more than they would in soil anyway.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, you hooked me in. I watched it and I thought, right, okay, you're right. So it's really, I think the important thing that you've just said there is what kind of a plant parent you are. What are you willing to do? So it's not necessarily that leca is difficult. It's just that there are different things that you have to do that you might not necessarily need to be doing, or you'd probably get away with a bit more if your plant was in soil than if it's living in leca, like filling up your reservoir
Yeah,
slash
absolutely.
watering your plant. You know, you could probably leave your plant for a few days without watering, but if you leave your reservoir for a longer time, then your plant is more likely to suffer. I don't think you answered my question. Are you still using Leca to grow your plants?
In the last week, I have given up.
Completely and absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah, completely. For me, I use big
Yeah.
trays and then put individual
Individual pots in the
pots.
trays. Yeah.
That reservoir would keep depleting so quickly. And even though I had like 6 or 7 2-liter bottles of plant nutrients that I could rely on, I was just going through them so quickly. And then it just became a cycle of me saying, I'll mix some more nutrients next weekend, and then next weekend, and then 5 weeks have
Oh
passed.
no.
And it's just, yeah, and I'm just using water, and the plants are getting smaller and smaller, but they're still growing so quickly
Yeah.
that they've ran. So now I have to do all of this work, and I finally said, you know what, I can't do this anymore,
Sure.
and Nora's gonna kill
Yeah.
me.
I think again, I think the thing that's really important that you said is you have to understand who you are, understand how you grow your plants, understand how you live your life, and make plant care fit with your life. That's my ethos anyway. So in my mind, there's never a wrong or a right way. It's always the way that works for you and your plants. End of. So what's your favorite kind of plant? So you particularly like philodendrons and monsteras. Do you dabble in any others?
Not honestly, not really. I do have like a few pothos, but basically, I try to keep it to aeroids
Yeah.
mostly. Some other plants that I have that are outside of the aeroids is I have a mother of thousands. I have maybe around 3 Hoyas. Hoyas are not my personal favorite, um, but I do keep a couple of those that I like. I have the Hoya heart, and I have a
Yeah.
Pubicalix and a
Hmm.
Carnosa. I dabbled a little bit in Tradescantia, but those got out of hand fairly
Yes,
quickly,
they
so
would.
I kicked those to the curb. Uh, but yeah, that's pretty much it. I feel like I know what I like to
Yeah.
grow. I know how I like to
Hmm.
grow. And for me, if it's growing the best looking plants that I can and the largest plants that I can. I feel like sticking with aeroids
Is the
is
way to
really
go.
what makes the most sense for me.
That's really
Yeah.
interesting because I think I'm completely the opposite because I have no commitment to any plant. I'll just like the look of something and I'll grab it. And I think one of my personal ethoses at the moment is I want to see what I can grow in Leca. So I'm constantly
It's
trying to
definitely a
see if I can grow something in Leca. And I think part of what I'm trying to do is when someone goes on YouTube and they ask the question, can I grow this in Leca? They'll find that I tried it and either it didn't work or it worked. So I'm just trying to do that for my own curiosity, but also just trying to provide that resource as well. So because of that, I've got so many. I've got Hoyas, I've got begonias, I've got, peperomias.
Yeah, and I think that's why you're such a great resource for stuff like that because people are always they always have those questions and it's good to take those risks as part of the hobby
Hmm.
because you really just want to explore the limits and really it comes down to what makes you happy and how do you exercise.
What nutrients were you using? Because I get a lot of people from Canada and the US asking me about nutrients, and what I use, they probably can't find. So, what did you find worked for you when you were using Leca?
So for me, I was using General Hydroponics, and for a North American brand, it's probably the number one ranked for
Mm,
nutrients. So that's the most popular around here. The issue with General Hydroponics is that it's a three-part system.
mm,
So you have to mix all three of them together in a specific way, in a specific order, and you have to make sure that you're not combining nutrients without, rinsing off your tools, or else you can get nutrient lockout.
mm.
Just making nutrients was a whole
Annoying.
process.
Mm,
I try to find a single nutrient, but a lot of them plant stores around here don't either they don't really carry or they were incredibly expensive to buy online.
mm,
That's one of the issues as well.
mm.
And I probably could have just used one of the general hydroponics, but for me personally, I like to make sure that I'm maximizing everything that I do.
Mm.
So for me, not using two parts of a three-part system, I feel like I'm not giving my plants the most benefit.
Of course, no, definitely. Because why would they make it three parts if you only needed one? So clearly, there's other
Yeah.
things that one is not providing that your plant needs.
Yeah, and another good thing about the general hydroponics is that depending on the state of your plant, it would have specific instructions about how much of each type of nutrient to add.
Right.
So if you had a flowering plant, then it would be asking you to use uh, more tablespoons or teaspoons of a specific part in that
Hmm.
series.
That sounds very complex.
Yeah, yeah, it is. I think it's really geared towards more professional
Hmm.
growers, particularly with like vegetables.
Hmm.
I think for the casual person, like the casual indoor house plant person who's just looking to have some plants in leca, it'd make the most sense to just get a one part
Hmm.
nutrient that's fairly balanced that can take care of most of your plants.
Definitely, definitely. And I think that's something that you guys have been missing out on because mixing of nutrients for me, I use a one part nutrient and it's just so easy. And because Melbourne's got like really good water, used to check my pH when I started, but I don't even check my pH anymore. I know that it's fine because I've checked it. I mean,
Yeah.
there's no point in checking it every time when you know that every time it's going to come out right and I never have to use pH up or pH down. So all I do is mix my nutrient, 5 mils of nutrient to 1 liter of water. I've got my big jugs. I mix like 5, 10 mils at a time. I have to do a few of 10 liters at a time. I do a lot because I have a lot of plants. And
Yeah, yeah,
that's it. That's really it. And all I'm doing is just filling up my reservoirs.
yeah, yeah. I'm sure if I looked a little harder, I could have found a decent one part nutrient or probably just compromised, but most of what I could find in Canada was part of a multi-part
Yeah.
series. If not three, then at least
Yeah,
two.
yeah. Well, growth technology is now in the US, so I would, encourage you to. I know you still got some leca in your house, so grab yourself a bottle and just try it just one time. I'd love to see. I'd love to
Okay,
see what you
I
think.
will.
Well, you could actually also use. It's very good for your plants and soil as well, so you could use that as well. And no, this is not sponsored. I'm just saying.
Yeah, I understand. No, I definitely, I'll think about it. I do use.
You're good.
It's tough. It's tough. Yeah,
Right.
I need a break. I need a at least a 2 year break from
From
Leca. Yeah,
leca. Oh, did it burn you
yeah,
that
maybe one
badly?
and a half. Honestly, when I was finally recycling all of my 2 liter bottles from my nutrients, it
It
was
was a
like,
happy
okay,
days.
yeah, it's like this is a weight off my shoulders.
Oh dear, oh dear. So now talking about your 2 liter bottles and your nutrients. So when you mixed up your nutrients, I know you said it took you about 10 minutes?
Yeah, it got faster the more experience that I
Yeah.
had. Like you said, in your city, your water's pretty good. In my city, I typically I would need to add just a tiny bit of pH down, but at some point I stopped bothering to do
Mm,
that, and I really didn't see
difference.
any key
Mm,
differences in how my plants were doing. But yeah, it would usually take me around 10 minutes to fill up like seven of them. I had them all on an assembly
yeah,
line. And yeah, so 10 minutes and then with the cleanup and
sure.
everything all
And
together.
how long did you keep that pre-mixed nutrient? How long did that last? Or how
Uh,
long were you comfortable keeping it?
I was probably keeping them around 3 weeks.
Mm-hmm.
I think that might be around where most of the recommendations that I've seen,
Mm,
because after a certain amount of time, the level of nutrients in the water starts to multiply.
mm. Yeah, because the water is evaporating.
So just in terms of, yeah, because in part the water is evaporating, but there's also like
Yeah, in the
microorganisms in
water.
there
Yeah.
that are multiplying. So just the parts per million tend to go up. But again, I tended not to see any main differences
Mm,
in my plants.
mm.
By the end of the 3 weeks, usually I had to
Mix more.
have refilled by then
Yeah,
anyway.
yeah,
So
that's the same thing I find because this question comes up a lot in with my viewers. Like, how long do you keep that solution once you've mixed it? My take on it is, look, once you've mixed it, you're not mixing like 200 liters. Just you know how many plants you've got, know how much nutrient you're going through each time. So maybe make double that, and then keep that in a cool, dark area, and before you know it, it'll be done. 3 weeks, definitely.
and the algae, oh my goodness.
You would have had a lot of problems with algae because you were using an open.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
that was a huge issue as well. I felt like for me, I sort of wanted to use Leca as a way to propagate plants as fast as
Mm,
possible. So having it in a tray that was easily accessible
yep.
for me was pretty good. And I would just like take a new tray, transfer all the plants,
Yep.
put it on the shelf,
Go and
and then
clean
dump
the
out
other
the rest
one.
and clean it. But the algae buildup, depending on how old my nutrients
Mm,
were, it was honestly like 2 weeks. Every 2 weeks it needed like a
yeah.
serious.
Yeah. Yeah. But again, I think, like you say, because you had it on a tray, and then I'm
Yeah,
assuming you would have been grow lights or something there as well. So
yeah, yeah, right underground.
oh yeah, so there's no way you can get away from that. That algae will grow regardless. There's nothing you can do.
It was. I assure you, I assure you it was. I went through a lot of vinegar,
Yeah, I can imagine. But then
let's say.
again, that was your personal choice because you chose to use a tray and you chose to use the grow lights directly on top of the plants. Then obviously that's bound to happen. But I find I don't have as much algae as probably you would have had because all my plants are in their individual cache pots like that. And then I've got it's dark and there's hardly any algae there. And this one actually, for a while, was living in my grow tent, but there's absolutely nothing there. There's no algae. So it just depends as well on what your setup is. When you did your transfers, were you always transferring your plants from soil to leca, or were you doing them as cuttings that were propagated in water or sphagnum moss and then put them in leca? How did you generally tend to do things?
So was always taking
Mm.
cuttings, growing them out in water first, having a little bit of roots, and then putting them directly into
Okay.
leca. For me, it seemed like that made the most
Mm.
sense. When I was just starting to get into leca and watching videos of people just ripping out these like beautiful plants out of soil and then spending, honestly, when they some of these creators didn't edit their videos and they would be just going for like 15 20 minutes of just rinsing off the
Oh my
roots
God.
as much as possible, and I'm having to like fast forward the YouTube video to like get to the part that I want. And I'm just thinking like this doesn't seem like the best
Yeah.
idea. And then I watch their second part in the series and then they're like, that didn't do very well in Leca. I guess I should have cleaned off the roots some
More.
more. And like they're showing their plant, it's just like withered and torn to shreds. So in my mind, it was like your plant is fine in soil. If you are transferring something to Leca, you really need a reason. And I think your reason has to just be better than I want to transfer this plant to
Hmm.
Leca. And that may seem a little bit, hard to understand, but if you're not wanting to transfer all of your plants to Leca so that you can streamline the process of caring for your
Hmm.
plants and making it easier for you, you shouldn't really be transferring individual soil plants just for the fun of it because it's just you're making busy work for
So,
yourself, and
so,
I
so
don't.
what you're saying is all or nothing.
Basically, that's what I've come down
Hmm.
to.
Hmm.
All or nothing, or at least like 99
Yeah.
percent, because it's
No,
tough.
I agree with you
I don't
there.
see that
I think
perspective.
it's one of the things that you've said in the last like 2 minutes that I agree with. Because I do get plants that are living in soil and I take them out of the soil and I put them in leca. But having said that, I like to get smaller plants though. So I'm not likely to get like a large monstera that you've got back there or, a calathea like this, take it out of the soil and put it in leca. I like to use
Yeah,
younger plants that are not as established and have them grow into the leca. And in that way, they get used to living in leca, which is why like when I do my transfers, it takes a pretty long time for my plants to start getting the big leaves that they eventually will because it's still establishing the root system. It's still setting itself up to grow in that medium. I think you have to understand why you're doing it. And for me, it's
yeah,
pest control and just funnily enough, growing my plants in leca actually streamlined my plant growing process. So it's so much
yeah,
easier for me to
absolutely.
take care of my plants. They're all in leca, and because I've had them for a long time, and I don't have like weekend sessions of taking care of my plants. I might be busy, I might not get to it. And sometimes I don't change my nutrient solution for a month, even. I'm just topping up.
Yeah,
But my plants are fine. That's probably not ideal, but they're fine. And I'll get to them when I get to them, which works for me.
yeah, absolutely. I definitely agree with that because if you're not going to make things easier on yourself, then make a different choice because there's lots of other things that you could be using your time
Yeah.
for, and like I said, like just clearing up that mental
Mm.
space is so much better.
Now, one of the things you talk about in your video is if using leca is good for people who sell plants.
Yeah,
Mm.
yeah. I
Talk to me
I
about that.
I stick by that statement. So in Leca, not only are your plants growing faster so that you can propagate them fast and make more, sell more,
Mm-hmm.
your plants, if you're shipping them
Mm-hmm.
somewhere, you can very easily just pull them out of
Yeah.
Leca and ship them in bare
Mm-hmm.
roots. Yeah, so that would be lighter as
Yeah.
well. So if you're growing plants in soil, not only do you have to take the extra time to wrap the plant so that the soil's not flying around everywhere,
Mm-hmm.
it's going to be more expensive just because of the weight of the plant.
Mm-hmm.
So that's nice. I feel like Leca's easier for someone who's selling
Mm.
plants, and especially like if you're shipping something internationally, you can't ship a plant with soil anyway, so that takes that extra step out
Mm.
as well.
Mm. Now, what about for the person who's receiving this plant that's only ever lived in leca?
So if you are
Mm-hmm.
receiving a plant that is bare root,
Mm-hmm. That's only ever lived in leca, not
yeah.
bare root, as in they took it out of the soil and they whacked it on some.
Oh,
Yeah,
right, right.
yeah.
No, that's for me. That's the easiest transition,
Mm.
and that plant can literally transition into anything.
Now, startup costs. That was one of your major issues with Leca.
With this hobby, you quickly, very quickly realize how much it's costing. Uh, Soil is expensive, especially if you're using the kind of soil that I like to use when growing my aroid. With leca, the nutrients, depending on what country you're from, they tend to be more expensive. You tend to have to buy all of it, every single thing you need. You need your particular pots. You need your cash pots, nutrients. You may need your pH upper dip.
Mm-hmm.
That initial cost builds
Mm-hmm.
up, whereas you can spend like, I don't know, $20 and buy 6 or 7 plants
Yep.
and have enough soil to keep those plants for 2 years.
Yep.
Whereas you're spending $20 before even the
On one
cost of
pot.
the plant, and you're probably even spending more than $20.
Yes, no, I think it's a very valid point, and I think it's a point that people need to address from the very beginning. It's not, and I think I like what you said in your video, where at the start it does end up being a lot more expensive, but in the long run it probably kind of evens out because once you've got your leca, you've got your leca. It's completely reusable. All you need to do is just wash it, clean it, sterilize it, and you can use it for the next plant. You're not going to need to go back and buy more potting mix or more horticultural charcoal or whatever, which you will need to do with a plant that's living in soil because you have to, because
Yeah,
that
yeah,
degrades and you have to repot and all the rest of this kind of thing. But yeah, the cost is there, and it's you go into it with your eyes wide open. It's different. I mean, at the moment, I'll bring up this one, for example. This generally tends to be my usual setup. Now, this is a normal nursery pot, which I drilled holes into, and this is just any normal food container, and I just wrap that up, and that's my cash pot. That's an easy way
yeah,
of doing things. Not the prettiest,
yeah.
not
No,
the
that's
prettiest.
great. It looks fine. It
Yeah,
looks
it
fine
looks
to me.
fine, but it's not. I mean, can you imagine if maybe you don't have like 600 plants in your home. You probably just want to have four, but you want them to look really pretty because, you've got your setup. It's looking beautiful. This is not it. This won't do. You probably then have to get a more expensive pot, like a lechuza pot or something. They tend to be a lot more
Yeah.
expensive. So, yeah, it can be depending on the look that you're going for.
Yeah, I think you definitely have to consider like probably someone who's looking into getting into leca has a fair number of plants already.
Yeah.
And I think that's an important assumption that you have to make. So that person is probably used to spending more money
Mm,
on their plants.
yes.
So you are in that position of privilege where you can, afford a hobby,
Mm,
that entry might not be as a big deal, but
mm.
it is important to recognize that your day one is probably not going to be let's spend $80, let's do
Yeah.
leca when I've never had a plant before.
It's
So
yeah,
yeah, it's
that's
important
yeah.
to know where people are coming from.
That's well, this was really nice. I had a lovely chat, and I still think you need to get back on the Hoya bandwagon someday. Oh, not Hoya, sorry,
On the Hoya
Leca
bandwagon,
bandwagon. Oh my
on the
god, I've got the
leca
Hoya on my head.
bandwagon.
Leca bandwagon.
Yeah,
You know,
one day, one day
one
maybe.
day I might be able to convince you.
uh we'll see, we'll
One
see.
day, one day, one day, at least, because yeah, I mean, you said so yourself. You said to yourself, your plants grow better.
They do,
Or maybe
they
what
do.
we should do is get you into full hydro, deep water culture, everything.
uh if I had the space, that might be it. I might be more willing to try that actually,
Yeah,
but um, I feel like if I could automate
yeah,
everything and do full
yeah.
hydro, then yeah, that would be something that I'd be
I
interested in.
think full hydro definitely. I'm also very much thinking about full hydro. The problem with full hydro though is
Yeah.
it's a lot of setup and
Yes.
the
Yeah.
the curve, the knowledge curve is very steep.
Yeah.
There's lots to learn about how to do what and how to automate what. It's just so much easier to do semi hydro for now. And like you say, the space issue is also a bit of a problem.
Yeah. Yeah. I do have a friend who's into like home automation. So if I ever did that, like he would be my
Your
go-to
go-to
guy of
guy.
like
Oh,
how to set everything up.
yeah, that would
Yeah.
be nice. But yeah, that's definitely something to think about. And when you do, let me know, and then maybe I can just completely replicate your process.
Yeah. Yeah, sounds
There's
good.
no point in
I'll
reinventing the wheel.
yeah, I'll make a new channel. It'll be called the Hydro King or something
Yes,
like that.
no, definitely. I think there's a lot of scope for that, especially if you're looking at growing food as well,
Yeah, for sure.
vegetables and
Yeah, there's lots of those cool tower
yeah.
like LED tower things that use the full
Mm.
hydro. Those are pretty
Yeah,
cool too.
they are. Thank you so much for your time, Lee. This was really lovely. Do you have anything else you want to?
Definitely like thanks for having me. This was a great chat and always appreciate the collaborations. And I think next year we'll compare pictures and see what's what.
Is that what you're laying out there, Lee?
Yeah. Yeah.
Are we comparing pothos?
Yes.
These ones.
Okay. Okay, give me 2 years.
This one.
Okay, give me 3 years.
Is that what you really want to do with your moss poles? We can do that. We can do that.
Yeah, we'll set a date. 4 years from
Why do
now.
you keep adding time?
I might need more
You might
time. I might need a
nah.
little
You
bit
know,
more time.
I know what you need to do, Lee. You just need to stay in your philodendron lane. That's what you need to do. Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
All right. I see how it
Yeah,
is.
just
Okay.
stay in your monstera and philodendron lane and leave the calatheas and the pothos to me. How about that?
All right. Fine. We can we can shake on it.
Yeah, I think that's better. I know lots of people want us to have a fight about that, but I think, I'm
Yeah.
not a fighter, I'm a lover. I like to have you on my side. But yeah, so on that note, everybody, if you don't know who Lee is, and if you don't, I really don't understand, link in the description below to his YouTube channel. You must go and see it. It is absolutely epic. He's a lovely soul. He's a lovely, calm soul. He's not hyper crazy like me. And he's got gorgeous plants. He's got gorgeous plants. So you need to go and see him. And we will see you next time on the Leca Queen podcast.
See ya.
Bye.